So let's get to it. We have just said that in this new programming paradigm, in this new way of thinking about how we program, we are not going to be focusing so much on how we do things, but on the things that we are doing and on the concepts that we are implementing. The first very important concept here is the concept of class. So let's say I want to write some code that helps me work with my library. I will need the concept of book, for example. I may need the concept of list of books or of book genre or things like that. All the concepts that I decide are important are very likely going to end up being classes in my code. Let's imagine, for example, that I want some code that codifies Pokemon. I'm going to have a Pokemon class, and a Pokemon is a little monster that comes out of a ball and has some characteristics, the attack, the defense, and so on and so forth. Or I want to speak about famous manga baseball players, volleyball player, Haikyuu, for example. Okay, so I'm going to have a class that's going to be the Haikyuu, the volleyball player, which is going to have again some characteristics, how far how tall the player can jump, how fast he can run, or he or she can run, and so on and so forth. So basically, for me, a class is going to be an idea that I'm going to be implementing. In object-oriented programming, the code that I will write for my class will encapsulate, will express the characteristics of this idea. I'm going to have something that I want to code about, and I'm going to use my Python code to express the characteristics that I think this idea has. The second very important concept that I'm going to need to think about is objects. After all, this new way of thinking, this new programming paradigm is called object-oriented programming and not class-oriented programming. So really, what are objects? Well, objects are going to be the specific instances of my class. I have been saying that classes are going to be ideas about which I want to write some code. So classes, as all ideas, are abstract. They are not specific. I cannot touch the idea. Okay? They are general sets of characteristics, the general, as I was saying, concepts, general ideas that I want to write code about. What is specific? What is there that I can actually touch, actually refer to in specific terms? Well, those are the objects. For example, in the examples that I have just seen, a Haikyuu player, a volleyball player, is one example of a class, but Shoyo Hinata will be one object, one particular example of my class. Classes are abstract, and objects will be specific, will be instances, will be concretizations of my class. In the Pokemon example, I can have the Pokemon class that speaks about, encapsulates the characteristics of Pokemon, and then I can have Venusaur or Charmander or Squirtle, okay, which are specific objects of my class, specific instances of my class. To say it again, classes represent abstract ideas, while objects are specific instances of my class. Okay? So all of this is very abstract. How do I define a class? Well, I can do it like this in Python. I just use the reserved word class and then write the name of the class. And in this notebook, we are going to be using a class that's called foodstuff that will encapsulate the characteristics of food in Japan. So this is just foodstuff, things to do with food, types of food, and every object will be one particular type of foodstuff. I could, of course, define other types of class. For example, the point class. I am always going to be using the reserved word class in Python, and usually class names start with a capital letter, but that's just convention. That's just the way things are usually done. For example, here I also used the capital F for the foodstuff class. I could picture this into this kind of image. So in my world, in the world of my code, I'm going to have this big box, this box that is called, in this case, for example, point. So I'm going to have the abstract idea of a point. And then maybe I will have other classes that will interact with this one, and I will have many objects of the point class. If someone has ever done some software engineering, this might be reminding you of UML diagrams, Unified Modeling language diagrams, and that's a little bit the look I was going for. In my object-oriented programming code, I will be thinking about classes and how they relate to each other, and then I'm going to turn these abstract classes into specific instances that I will call objects.